Chicago, 1929. The sound of gunfire echoes through a cold February morning. 7 men lie dead inside a garage on North Clark Street, lined up against a wall, executed with military precision. No witnesses, no arrests, but everyone knows who's responsible. Al Capone, a man who never pulled the trigger, yet controlled a city through fear, money, and blood. This is the story of how a Brooklyn street kid became the most powerful crime boss in American history, and how his empire would change organized crime forever. You don't start as Al Capone, you start as Alphonse Gabriel Capone, born in 1899 to Italian immigrant parents in Brooklyn, New York. His father was a barber, his mother a seamstress, a hard-working family trying to survive in a country that didn't always welcome them. But young Al wasn't interested in school or discipline. By the age of 14, he had already been expelled for punching a teacher. The streets became his classroom. Brooklyn in the early 1900s was a breeding ground for gangs. Violence, loyalty, and survival were the only rules. Capone quickly found his place among local street gangs like the 5 Points Gang, one of the most feared criminal organizations of its time. It was here he met a man who would shape his future, Johnny Torrio. Torrio saw something in Capone, not just muscle, but intelligence, a mind that understood power. And power was everything. In 1919, everything changed. Torrio had already moved to Chicago, working under crime boss Big Jim Colosimo. The city was booming, and so was opportunity. Then came Prohibition. Alcohol was banned across the United States. But banning something doesn't stop demand. It creates a black market, and that's where fortunes are made. Torrio called Capone to Chicago. Capone didn't hesitate. At just 20 years old, he left Brooklyn behind and stepped into a city on the edge of chaos. Chicago was a battlefield of rival gangs, corruption, and endless opportunity, and Capone was ready to play the game. When Colosimo was mysteriously assassinated in 1920, Torrio took control, and Capone became his right-hand man. The rise had begun. Capone understood something most criminals didn't. Violence alone wasn't enough. You needed structure, business, control. Under Torrio's guidance, Capone helped build a massive bootlegging operation, producing, transporting, and selling illegal alcohol across Chicago. Speakeasies popped up everywhere. Police were bribed, politicians were bought. Money flowed like water. But where there's money, there's competition. Rival gangs wanted a piece of the empire, and Capone wasn't the type to share. Gunfights became common. Streets turned into war zones. Bombings, assassinations, intimidation, all tools in Capone's arsenal. In 1925, after surviving an assassination attempt, Johnny Torrio stepped down and handed control to Capone. At just 26 years old, Al Capone was now the most powerful crime boss in Chicago, and he ran it like a corporation. He had accountants, lawyers, enforcers, distributors. His empire generated millions, the equivalent of hundreds of millions today. But Capone wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wanted to be seen. By the late 1920s, Al Capone was a celebrity. He wore expensive suits, dined in the finest restaurants, appeared in newspapers, even gave interviews. To some, he was a villain. To others, a hero. During the Great Depression, while banks collapsed and people starved, Capone opened soup kitchens, feeding thousands, building an image of generosity. But behind that image was something darker. The violence never stopped, and it reached its peak on February 14th, 1929. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 7 members of a rival gang, led by Bugs Moran, were executed by men disguised as police officers. They were lined up against a wall, and shot with machine guns. Capone was in Florida at the time, an alibi, but no one believed he wasn't behind it. The massacre shocked the nation. It wasn't just gang violence anymore. It was organized execution. The government could no longer ignore him. But here's the twist. They couldn't arrest him for murder. There was no evidence. So they went after something else. Taxes.